fans say, oh, he's a cancer in the locker room. He's this. It's like, nobody cares. Like, because at the end of the day, like, they're using us as a product. And as the product, I'm not gonna be mad at another product for getting the most for his family, like for whatever he feels. That's that man's decision. So any kind of contract dispute or holdout, I never viewed it as he's a cancer in the locker room. I always viewed it as that man's trying to get paid. He's trying to do what the best is for a family. I don't think people really understand that.
They don't. And the average surgery is over 200,000.
Yeah.
So for when people say, all right, it's these millionaires that are whining, they're making millions.
Right.
But we're putting our body on the line.
What is going on, Houston? Man, we're getting good news today. Looks like they're starting phase 1 of Texas Get Your Ass Back to Work process. So it'll be interesting to see, man. Really, honestly, the only thing I've really missed is the gym, bro. Because as far as all the things I have as my home gym, like when you really lift heavy, like there's only so much that you could truly do. So earlier this week I got a bike delivery, which is great because when I was doing 2-a-days when the gym was open in the afternoons and the evenings, I would actually have to go and just do cardio, which most likely would be either running or on the bike. And now that I have it, I can actually get to do that at home without having to drive to the gym. Of course, the gym's only 5 minutes away, so when I get bored of that, I can always just go. But I think that's phase 2 as far as the gym is concerned. But as far as for me, I ain't gonna wait, man. Sunday, we got a 4-on-4 soccer meetup that I'm going to. So I'll be assisting and competing in that. But don't worry. You're gonna get a video on Sunday. As you guys know, I've talked to you guys about this channel. This channel will have a new video Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. And one Tuesday out of every month, you'll get a tribute to former Texans players. But anyways, man, enough about that. Today we're here to discuss about Bill O'Brien's infamous press conference that he had yesterday, where we really couldn't get much video on it. We just got audio of it. I know Mike Berman from Fox had a couple of clips that he posted, but other than that, man, we really couldn't see him struggling with his patio and whatever else was going on. Not sure if you guys tuned in, but we definitely will be hearing some of that today and discussing it, because I think there was quite a few telling things about that press conference, and it just continues to be funny to me because O'Brien, to me, continues to act like a man who just got here, like last year, who got here when Deshaun Watson got here. Like, no, bro, you've been here since 2014. It is now 6 years after, and we're yet to see much about it. But anyways, man, let's get right to it, man. He starts off by talking about, how thankful he is to all the medical staff, doctors, and nurses, which I believe everyone is. Unfortunately, to me, they're tied up in a place where they can only do as far as they tell them to do. That's why I believe that science to me is always limited, because to me it's always based on whatever God allows you to get wisdom on. And so, that's where we are. As far as vaccines, your boy not getting no vaccines. That's not my thing. Look. Yeah, no, I haven't got a flu shot since like when I was in my parents' house and they forced me. So as far as vaccines, I'm just not a fan. So he starts off by thanking the doctors and nurses, specifically for him. In his case, I'm not sure if you guys know, but he has a son who's in special needs and needs quite the attention. So I'm sure that's what it really derived from. But other than that, man, he got right into it and started giving us details about it. So let's take a listen, man.
The key to having the best.
All right, so once he thanks the doctors, he starts to get into kind of give you a synopsis of all the moves that have happened. Basically, what he's doing is he's trying to pacify the anger that's coming from the fans. So it's very, very telling that he knows what's going on social media. He knows how everyone's reacted to the DeAndre Hopkins trade. He knows how everyone's reacting to the Brandon Cooks trade. So he knows all this stuff that's been going on with the fans. You know, there were signs that I believe in front of NRG Stadium where they were saying fire Bill O'Brien. Of course, they misspelled that, but you know, different little things like that I'm sure that they're aware of. And so he starts to give you a synopsis of all the moves and why he thinks that this is a team thing. But we'll get right into that. Let's take a listen.
Team is not just having the best player. We have a lot of really good players. You know, obviously, we've got players that are Pro Bowl players. We've got players that are tremendous role players. But really the key to having the best team is to have a room full of productive players, layers and layers of productive players relative to what they're.
I think that part right there, when he talks about layers and layers, tripped everybody out. Because here's my thing, and this is where when the casual fan, he gets away with saying layers and layers. With a true hard fan, you don't get away with that because you've had layers and layers of offense, and you're yet to be able to use all the tools. Think about last year. You had Duke Johnson and Carlos Hyde. But yet at times, in games, you only chose to go with either or. You either ran with Duke heavy or you ran with Carlos Hyde heavy, but it was never really a heavy mixture of both of them. And so, you know, you think about the times that Will Fuller was healthy. You didn't really use Kenny Stills. You had Kenny Stills on the sideline. So when you say you got layers and layers, to me, what you're really saying is we have depth. We have protection if Will Fuller goes down again or if Kenny Stills goes down again. We have weapons. We don't have to, you know, I guess in his eyes, it would be simplify the offense and have less play calling. But to me, the game calling and the play calling and the game management, it has not mattered how many layers you've had. When you've had all the layers, you haven't done really anything with it. And when you haven't had it, that's actually when you shine the best, I think, when you actually simplify the things for the players out there. So, as you guys very well know, there's much documentation about how complex the Bill O'Brien offense is. And look, you go back to his New England days. He fought with Tom Brady because Tom Brady was upset that certain wide receivers weren't running the routes according to the game plan. And Bill O'Brien was upset at Tom Brady because he felt like, look, they're running what they can. And so in my eyes, it's always been about his scheming. Look, he doesn't scheme quick routes. His routes take forever to develop. And it's like, this is the reason why he's bringing all this speed, because he thinks with the speed, these wide receivers will be able to get to where they need to get in order for Deshaun Watson to release the ball as fast as he can and get moving down the field. So like I said last week, I understand the mentality and the whole thing around this. But the fact is, when you look at the tape and you look at Bill O'Brien, nothing has changed from 2014 to getting Deshaun Watson. That first year with Deshaun Watson, his rookie year, you could tell that Bill O'Brien made adjustments because he wanted Deshaun Watson to feel acclimated. He wanted him to not panic so much about his rookie year. But then his sophomore year, when he starts to take on more of the Texans and Bill O'Brien offense and scheme, what is there to show about it? You know, like he struggled so much that year. So last year they bring a little bit more weapons. The offense looks a little bit better at times, but it's not consistent enough. So this year he decides, hey, I'm going to bring in the speed. And in this draft, I'm going to go defense heavy. And look, you know, and he'll talk about this. We'll hear about how he thinks, you know, there's need up front that needs to be help in the defense. He'll talk about that. It's not anything new that I haven't discussed on this channel. But yeah, man, let's get right back to it.
Goals are on the football team. Let's say contracts, injuries, and the salary cap are a part of the game as we know it. And those have to come into play in every decision we make relative to the personnel on our team. And really, after researching teams that really win in January, we've won the wild card game, but we have not gotten past that. Everybody understands that in Houston.
All right. So for the first time, I think we get a Bill O'Brien who is a little bit more open. He says there, look, we're trying to win in January. Going back to that first call that he had with ticket holders, he's talking about moving in January, winning in January, and he's accepting that he hasn't won past any wild card game. And so, getting to the division game, that's really where they've been truncated. So, yeah.
Working tirelessly to get past that, to get to the ultimate goal of the Super Bowl. But after studying teams,
I think that honestly, that's the first time that I've heard Bill O'Brien say Super Bowl. Like I think he said like synonyms with the Super Bowl, like the big game, the bowl. But I don't think I've ever have heard him, besides maybe the introduction of him as a coach, about Super Bowl, like the word.
Win in January, win in February. Our staff is more convicted than ever that we must be prepared to have layers upon layers of productive players.
Goes the layers again.
Build on the tradition that we have established here of winning the AFC South 4 out of the last 5 years, and to try to get beyond that. We know that the goal is to get beyond that, but we've studied, we've researched. I think.
So there he is again, accepting that. Hey, look, it's still kind of in a petty way saying, "Hey, look, we won the AFC South 4 out of 7 years I've been here, but I know the goal is to do more than that." I find that quite interesting.
This time has given myself and our staff a lot of time to reflect, and obviously, I know we want to be better, but I think if you look back to, let's just call it August, the end of July, last July, August, I don't think either myself or anybody involved with the Texans or even our fans would have thought that some of the moves that we made would have worked out the way they worked out. I mean, we brought Carlos Hyde in. He rushed for more than 1,000 yards the first time in his career. We brought Jacob Martin in. He had 3 sacks.
Here's my problem with him talking about moves he's done. And this is my problem with him making moves. Look, it's all great and dandy for you to make moves. But let's be honest. The fact that you couldn't re-sign Carlos Hyde is the reason that we are where we are today. Because I'm fully convinced that you could still have made that Brandon Cooks move had you still had Carlos Hyde and DeAndre Hopkins on this team. You missed Carlos Hyde by $1 million. But you got so desperate that not realizing, like right now, Carlos Hyde is not signed, not realizing that, hey, let's give it some time. Eventually, he'll realize he's asking for too much money. We'll approach him again and offer him the same thing, if not less. Like, where's the negotiation process in this? That's why I feel like sometimes he lowballs players on purpose because he doesn't truly want them. And it's okay if you don't want a player and you don't want to sign them. But when you make a trade, when you give up future value for a player and you don't want this player in the long haul, like, that's my problem with Bill O'Brien. I understand that you're trying to get into the immediate future and make an immediate impact because we got Deshaun Watson on a rookie contract and there's plenty of players that you got to play, that you got to pay down the line. But when you can't keep the players, that's a huge problem.
Including a huge sack in a wild card game that helped us win the game. Arcavius Mingo blocked a huge punt in the playoff game. Keon Cross.
Okay, he's talking about Arcavius Mingo. Dude, you lost Mingo to Pagano, who left your coaching staff and went, I believe, with the Bears, and now he's over there with the Bears. And yeah, I mean, look, another guy that you got off a trade and you couldn't keep. And the funny thing about Arcavius Mingo and why it's so telling is the dude signed a minimum contract. So that tells me that your minimum contract didn't make any sense because that guy was only over here because of Pagano. And that's fine and all. But to me, it's like, let's not pretend that this stuff is not going on when it truly is.
I would say he's one of the better special teams players in the NFL. Gary Conley making plays on the balls. Really, really graded highly.
He's talking about the Conley trade. Again, you traded a third round, I believe, for Conley, and in exchange, there's already been news that you don't want to pick up his contract option. Look, if they draft, if they trade down as they're planning to do, and then they get a cornerback in the second round, that's going to be pretty telling about Conley. That means that they definitely are expecting to not pick up that option and lowball him, and eventually might let him walk. So that might be another potential trade of a future pick that now you got to make up because you don't want to keep this player because you think that compared to New England, everyone should take pay cuts. But New England has won championships. They can negotiate with players in that way and say, hey, look, we are a dynasty here. We're winning rings. And I could definitely see how a player is like, yeah, I definitely want to be a part of that because everybody wants to be part of a winning team. But at the end of the day, when you're not winning any rings and you're getting choked up like everybody else and all you got to show for is AFC South banners, there's a problem, bro.
In his games with us this year, Duke Johnson converting a 3rd and 20 in the wild card game to help us win the game. I think if we reflect back, I think it's important that
I need to look up Duke Johnson's contract and see when it expires.
what was accomplished last year and where we need to go. Where we need to go and what we're trying to do. I would say, in conclusion of these remarks, and then I'll open it up to questions, I would say I'm really excited about our current team. We've added players upon players. If you just give me 1 second and indulge me for a second.
Indulge him, guys. Indulge him.
In no specific order, we were able to sign back some really key.
And Bill, we've given you more than 1 second. We've given you 6 years. So stop it.
Free agents that we had on our own team, like Darren Fells and Kaimi Fairbairn and Dylan Cole and AJ McCarron and more. Philip Gaines, role players, Vernon Hargraves, Bradley Roby.
When he mentioned Vernon Hargraves, all I could think was, dude, the only reason you resigned him is because Chris Harris decided he didn't want to come here. Because you released him, then went after Chris Harris rejected your offer, and you're like, panic mode. Get Hargraves back here.
Good job. Yes, we did lose DJ Reader. We tried very hard to keep DJ Reader. DJ Reader is an excellent player, an even better person, and we wish him the best in Cincinnati, but it's hard to keep everybody. I would say free agent-wise, we were able to add Eric Murray and Jalen Watkins and Randall Cobb. And then he
boasts about Eric Murray like he's the second coming of freaking Tyrann Mathieu or any other great safety, freaking Ed Reed or somebody like that, bro.
Recently, we made a trade for Brandon Cooks. We have 2 receivers there at that position now that have played in January and in February. And so, like I said, we're so excited about where we are. It's very incomplete, though. It's incomplete relative to being before the draft. I mean, we have a long way to go here in building our team, but we want to win the postseason, and we understand that. We understand what it takes to get there, and we understand in our minds what it takes to move beyond where we've been. I'd say this year we moved the furthest that we've been in the Deshaun Watson era, and we have more Pro Bowls on our team. We have more guys that have played in Super Bowls on our team. We're in a good position relative to where we're at.
Let me pause it right there. When he mentions the Deshaun Watson era, I know there were some people on Twitter that were saying, whoa, they were making a big deal about OBrien calling it the Deshaun Watson era because of all the trade rumors. I really honestly don't believe that Deshaun Watson will be traded unless, hope not, the dude gets injured in a way that, he's no longer valuable to the team. But when Bill O'Brien says the Deshaun Watson era, to me, I don't think, he's finally acknowledged this is Deshaun Watson's team. I honestly think I have a good quarterback, that he thinks I have a good quarterback right now, that's making plays, that is impactful, that saves my ass a lot of the times, and I'm going to keep them until the next big thing. And, that's the same way that Bill Belichick has thought. All eras come to an end. So in my head, the way that I see Bill O'Brien seeing it is he thinks he's going to be here for the long haul. And to me, that is a big problem.
During this time of the year, I know a lot of people are going to ask me about obviously, probably the transaction that made the most news, DeAndre Hopkins. First and foremost, I would tell you that DeAndre Hopkins was a great player in Houston. Made a ton of plays for us, and just did a great job. I mean, obviously
This is what I find pretty telling, because usually, a player that he truly does like, he'll start talking about the guy's intelligence or the guy's hard work, but really what he made it seem was like he's just another tool in my box, because he's made a lot of plays for us. The way that he talks about, DeAndre Hopkins, it's not in a way of any personal relationship. And that's why I feel like the news that came out about that conversation that they had where he compared him about Aaron Hernandez, which they later asked him about, is probably fairly true.
The production is there, and everybody knows what that production is. I'd say with 3 years left on his contract, his representatives, himself, myself, and our team of people, we spoke, and we felt like, relative to what I said earlier, salary cap, future, our team being able to provide our team with more and more role players, layers of players. It was in the best interest of our team to move DeAndre to Arizona. We feel like we made a really good deal with Arizona. We're so excited about having David Johnson on board here. We've got the 40th pick next week in the draft.
See how fairly fast he moves away from the DeAndre Hopkins move? He basically says, look, David Johnson is the equivalent of DeAndre Hopkins, and that's how I take it. And in my eyes, that's not true, because DeAndre Hopkins has played out there with a messed up shoulder and messed up ribs, and David Johnson has not been that type of player. He said it today in his press conference. He's had nicks that left him out the game. So what you're getting in David Johnson is a guy who, any little hit, he's not going to go out there and play for you while hurt. So that to me is very interesting, and we'll have to see. Definitely have to see how it goes.
We're really excited about that, and we wish DeAndre the best. DeAndre's a great football player, and he'll do well in Arizona. We wish him the best in Arizona. With that, I'll open it up to questions.
All right, so like I said, he summarizes everything that's going on. He basically tries to pacify the anger between Texans fans and tries to promise something that he hasn't remotely been close to, which is a Super Bowl. And to me, it's like, that's basically telling the fans, like, hey, give me... He goes on to tell the fan to give them 2 or 3 years to see if this trade was worth it. And to me, it's like, bro, I don't want to give you another year. We're just talking about 2 and 3 years. So that is very telling, very telling. But let's get to the questions, man.
If you can just scoot back just a tiny bit.
Yeah, Bill O'Brien. Your face is all on the screen.
John McClain, you're unmuted and you're up.
Bill, you say numerous times about moves in the best interest of the team. How is your team better without Hopkins? How is the offense better without Hopkins?
John McClain, we often make fun of him, but he probably asks the most toughest questions out of most people, and probably gets on Bill O'Brien's nerve the most. So when it comes to that particular part of him, I don't mind it.
And how are you going to replace him?
Yeah, I don't think you replace Hopkins. I think that every year is different. I think that this year's offense will be totally different than last year's offense or the year before's offense. I mean, I think that Timmy Kelly and myself are doing a lot of Zoom meetings with our offensive staff. We're thinking about who we have on our team right now. We feel really good about where we are offensively right now with our personnel and what we're going to be able to do. Feel like our offensive line at the tackle position, the center position, at the guard position is in good shape. Our tight end position is very strong. Our wide receiver position is, we have 4, 5, 6 wide receivers that are going to be battling, and whenever we're able to get back to practice. But we feel good about our offense, John. We feel good about where it's at. Again, we've got to go out there and produce, but we've got a lot of players on offense.
Here's the thing with that. So they asked him about the team and basically his definition of all these layers that he has, and he talks about the competition in the wide receiver room. Look. Early on, when you look at the 2015 Hard Knocks, you see a conversation between O'Brien and Rick Smith where he's talking about when Ryan Mallett has been informed that he was the backup quarterback and how upset he was. And, he's talking to Cal McNair and he's telling Cal McNair, look, this is, and then Rick Smith later on in the room, hey, look, this is the NFL, we need competition, like guys shouldn't shy away from that and blah, blah, blah. And this is all good and dandy, but when you have a great, great player, when you have great, great players, that doesn't build them. And here's the other thing: not every person is built the same. Me, if you put me on a soccer field and you tell me this cat is better than me, and I know this cat is not better than me, I'm gonna take up on that challenge. I'm not gonna care who it is. But to some other players, that hinders them. That actually hurts and bruises their ego. And I think that's the part that Bill O'Brien doesn't get. And when it comes to coaching, you should be able to manage every single player. And I don't think he has that personal relationship with every single player. You hear stories about Bruce Arians and the way he treats his players. Like, people in Arizona were crying when that man had temporarily retired. Not because they were so close to winning the Super Bowl, because how impactful he was in their lives. And you talk about, his impact with Andrew Luck in Indianapolis, his impact, with many players in Pittsburgh. So, Bill O'Brien is just not that type of coach. And I think that's what really, really doesn't make him such a great coach, but an average coach, because he doesn't know how to have that type of relationship. And to me, I find it so ironic because you have a child at home who needs that type of attention, and you've seen him on camera do that, but yet with a team, it's like it's not there.
Aaron Reese, you're up.
Hey, Bill. Every time it seems like a running back gets paid, there's kind of a discourse or discussion of whether the analytics line up with that decision. And I wonder, someone who obviously has traded for Carlos Hyde, traded for Duke Johnson, traded for David Johnson, do you think something gets lost in that discussion of running backs are all replaceable, or that there's not a need to invest heavily in the position?
I think it's a good question, Aaron. I think that one thing, when you look at
that's kind of like a slick way of saying, isn't it known in the NFL that you don't pay running backs that much money because they're replaceable?
When you look at the trade with Arizona, and when you're involving a guy that like DeAndre, who's a great player, who they're going to have to adjust his contract with Arizona. I think you'll see that whenever that ends up happening.
Which is true. They've already came out and said that they're already in contract negotiations with DeAndre to extend and change his contract. So,
you're going to buy the 40th pick. Also, I think at the end of the day, there's going to be some player on their roster that you really like that is due some money in 2020 that you're going to take on to your team in addition to the 40th pick. And I think when you look at David Johnson,
that part right there is confusing. What you're saying is you looked at Arizona's roster, and besides not only also getting a pick because you traded DeAndre, since they're not willing to give you the first round pick and they gave you the second round, so now you're looking at someone who has a contract that you're gonna take on. Yeah, take on, but don't take on so much money of it. So I have two opinions about that particular thing, and that to me is either one, you're gonna truly restructure his contract based on his performance this year, or two, you're gonna do like you do with everyone else you trade for, cut him.
Johnson, he's a 3-down back who's had some really productive.
24 hours later, 1 week later, one long angry line later.
George.
Our offense and what we feel like having him, plus the type of guy he is, just being on the phone with him a few times, having met him face to face when he was coming out in the draft. I just am so excited about having him, Randall Cobb, Brandon.
Which by the way, he talks about meeting David Johnson in the draft today. David Johnson was on a press conference, and he says that he doesn't remember anything about that. Mainly because he says he was too nervous and too focused about the combine. So I find that pretty interesting because I thought Bill O'Brien liked smart players.
3 pros, 3 guys that really understand what it takes to win day in and day out, and we're excited about those guys.
Sarah Barshop.
Hey, Bill. We've talked a lot about how there's many different ways to build a team, but is there a reason why you guys have focused on trades and made so many over the past year as opposed to other ways of building a roster?
I think there's a lot of ways. I think it's a great question, Sarah. I think there's many ways to build a team. I think you have really, to me, you have 4 ways to build a team, or 4 periods of the year to build a team. You have free agency, you have off-season trades, which obviously we've done both. You have the draft, which is coming up in about a week, or in a week. You have training camp. Maybe there's joint practices where you see guys from other teams, or you get to that 53 cut or now 55 cut, and you see what's out there, and maybe you've had experience with a guy, and you can improve your roster that way. I think that you have the pre-trade deadline, which we've taken advantage of over the years here in Houston, whether it was Demaryius Thomas or other people in the past. So I think there's a lot of different ways to build your team. I'm giving you 4 of them right there, but there's also other ways. There's a lot of, I got a text yesterday from one of our special teams coaches talking to me about a guy, I don't want to mention his name, but a free agent that's out there that, they've had experience coaching in the past and that they think could really fit our team. Well,
and that's one thing that I do know Bill O'Brien does. He does allow his coaches to give their opinions about certain guys that they like. And I think that's also part of the problem, because what happens is they bring in these players that he doesn't really know much about in his character and their character, and then he ends up not liking them. And then it's like from one day to the other, you have a complete roster. Half your roster has been cut because you didn't know what you were bringing in. And to me, that's a big problem, because just like in an interview, if somebody asks me for a referral and I give a referral, I'm saying this person is good, but at the end of the day, he or she still has to go meet the person that's interviewing and know them for themselves. And if they like them, cool. And if they don't, then they don't. You know what I'm saying? So that's a little bit interesting. Now, as far as the 4 ways to build a team, that is true. We have seen Bill O'Brien do that, especially this last offseason. You think about the cross-and trade with New England for special teams. They did that. The Duke trade, the Hyde trade, the Tunsil, the Kenny Stills trade. Who else did they bring? They brought EJ Gaines in. And then from special teams, I think from time to time they'll re-sign people on the practice squad that we've seen. So, I mean, that is to be true.
Again, it comes down to, contracts, injury history, salary cap for not just this year, but 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. Those decisions have to be made, but that's another way. Coaches that have had experience with players in the past, that's another way to build your team. I think that, hey, Sarah, one thing on this, Sarah, I do want to make this point, in my opinion. Again, it's just my opinion. But I think that this year, with the unique position that we're in, I truly believe that this is a veteran type of year. I think it's going to be really difficult for rookies without off-season practicing on the field and being able to do all the things that you do during that 5-week stretch after the draft, and then training camp, and then before you know, and who knows when all that will start. I'm not trying to predict that, but I think this year being different than any other year is that's part of our building of the team also, Sarah.
So I find that interesting, because I think early on his trade with DeAndre and all the trade that Bill O'Brien was starting to do, there were certain people that were trying to explain the Bill O'Brien moves on Twitter, and they were basically talking about that it was going to be hard for rookies to come in here, and he doesn't already like rookies, and which is stupid, because Cunningham played his rookie year, Justin Reed played his rookie year, and they made huge impacts. And I think that's actually been part of the mistakes that he's had, where he hasn't played rookie players that were ready to play. But anyways, you look at those moves, and that would have been true. But guess what happened today? They started talking about getting people back out there. So yes and no, because it looks like you guys might just have a regular off season, and at the end of the day, you'll still be able to coach up these rookies in the draft. Which obviously he's gone back and said, hey, look, they're still trying to build through the draft. And that's why I say it's going to be a very, very interesting draft. I think, and don't kill me for saying this, but this one, it might be one of the best drafts that the Texans have, only because they're going to strictly focus on defense.
Morning, Bill. of Brandon. What do you feel like specifically he'll bring to the table, and how do you see the wide receiver room just kind of all meshing together, and the kind of offense you feel like you can build with the additions of Brandon, David, and the guys you already have back, like Will?
Yeah, no, I think that Brandon brings a lot to the table. He's a tremendous route runner. He's got great speed, really good deep ball player. If you look at his yards per catch over the years, it's really high. You're talking about in the 14 to 15 range. I've been asked about concussions. Yes, he's had concussions, but he's only missed 2 games since 2015. All of that was taken into account when we worked with Sean McVay on the trade.
First of all, you're pretending that Sean McVay is trying to help your team. That's not true. Like, he's trying to get rid of all this cap nightmare that they have over there so they can build a team in the draft and in other ways where they're not overpaying players, especially Ramsey, who they haven't even been starting to negotiate with. So I don't buy that. And another thing is, stop brushing concussions away like it ain't nothing, because you had a tight end on this team who retired because of concussions. So let's not pretend like concussions is just another normal thing. And coming from a guy who's had a concussion himself, those things are nothing to play with, man. They really, really mess up your whole system. I'm talking about they mess up your freaking emotions.
You're deep down in my heart. I still love you.
They mess up with you physically, and they mess up with you intestinal-wise, like inside. Like, bro, I remember like being all jacked up, and man, like I said, that is just nothing to play with. And the more and more people get that, like the more scared they are of a hit. Like, I remember, honestly, it took me like a good month to come back and not be afraid that if I hit the ball with a header, that it wouldn't impact me a certain way. So it is a scary thing, man.
Look, I think what we have at that receiver position right now is a very diverse group of receivers. You have Will Fuller, who's produced in great ways when he's been healthy. He's produced a lot. You have Kenny Stills, who came in here last year and did a really good job. Now you add Brandon Cooks, Randall Cobb, you've got Kiki Kuti. You've got some guys there, DeAndre Carter, who we were able to bring back.
This part of the press conference I find very interesting, because he starts naming every player on the roster, and the one person he never, ever mentions is Deshaun Gibson. And then he mentions about having and needing a safety. Like from a defensive tackle to an edge rusher, he goes to safety. So in their mind, they're thinking, look, we need help up front, and then we need help in the safety. And I get it, man, because Deshaun Gibson going down last year, huge impact against the Chiefs, man. Huge impact against the Chiefs. And to have a 3-year contract, which I think only 2 years of it's guaranteed, they're basically trying to decide whether they're going to keep him or not. And, man, I like Deshaun Gibson, but, man, that injury really, really, really hurt him. So that'll be interesting to hear. And he also mentions Kiki QT, which a lot of people are already thinking that he's on the out. But I think one of our tight ends is going to be on the out. I think one of our corners might be on the out. And some of our linebackers and special teams might be on the out. As far as KQT, I think he's getting one more chance, honestly, to learn under Randall Cobb. I'm not saying that he's going to replace Randall Cobb after a year. But what I'm saying is there are certain things that QT was getting coached on his first year. And his second year, once that coach left to San Francisco, didn't have such a great year. So it'll be interesting to see how they use him or how they coach him. But I don't think Kiki's going anywhere this year unless it happens with the trade and the draft.
We've got some guys there that I think will show the fans and really everybody that we have a very diverse group of wide receivers that we're really excited about, being able to get to work with.
Hi, what do you think is your biggest need as you enter this year's draft?
Here we go.
I think it's a good question, Christy. I think that, I think there's a lot of things we have to look at. Look, let's I feel good about our defensive line, but when you lose a player like DJ Reader, you've got to think about you're not going to be able to replace DJ Reader, but because he was such an excellent player for what his skill set, what he brought to the table. I'm on my back patio, so things are blowing around. I'm sorry about that.
Clean your backyard, Bill.
So I think that's a. Hey, hold on one second.
Anyways, he goes and does whatever he's doing. But yeah, man, he talks about DJ Reader and replacing him up front. I agree. You need to do it. You need to do it early. And there's great players for that in this draft. So, man, whether they get the A&M guy or they get the guy from Missouri, I also think the Auburn guy is who they've been aiming at. So we'll see, man. It all depends on who falls from the first round, because ultimately, if you have an inside or outside linebacker or a safety who's very strong, who should have never fell to the second round, it might be hard to skip on. And that's why I really honestly think they're going to trade down.
So I think that, I don't think, I'm not saying, Christy, that you're going to be able to replace that player in the draft. That's really not what I'm saying either. I'm just saying overall, when you look at that position, you feel good about that position. Obviously, JJ there, and, Angelo Blackson, and we signed Timmy Jernigan, which was a big get for us to be able to bring Timmy Jernigan onto our roster.
Okay, here's a fact about Tim Jernigan. Tim Jernigan was their backup plan. They tried to sign Snacks, Harrison, but he didn't. He didn't want to sign. So it's interesting. And I think it's interesting for him, too, because by passing up on the Texans, he hasn't signed with the Cowboys, which was the other suitor for him. And now I'm thinking, like, what's going on with Harrison? Because at the end of the day, if Bill O'Brien was smart, you draft an edge rusher, defensive tackle, and if Harrison's still out there, why not make a second attempt to get him?
Which is something I didn't mention earlier, but I should have. But I still think we've got to add depth there. I think, past that, I think when you look at the draft specifically, you're not gonna draft based on need. You're gonna draft based on who is the best player for your team when you're picking at that pick. Okay?
That is drafting on need. When you're looking at the best player for what you need, that's need. Come on, Bill O'Brien.
And again, if there's a bunch of players there that you think can fit the team, well, maybe you think about doing some other things within the draft. So.
Trading down.
I would say defensive line. I would say we're looking at all the positions. Safety, obviously, is another position that I think we can add to. We've added Eric Murray. We've added Jalen Watkins, but we can continue to add depth there. But, yeah, I'd say, there's not one specific need, but there's several.
James Palmer?
Hey, Bill, hope you and your family are...
First of all, James Palmer is a Bill O'Brien reporter. Like, when Palmer reports stuff about the Texans, it's because Bill O'Brien's feeding it to him. So it's probably going to be one of those political right questions.
Hey, Bill, hope you and your family are doing well. Good to see you. I have a question about kind of your relationship with Deshaun and what we're going through with the virtual kind of learning that's going to happen moving forward. What's, in your time with him, the best way you figured out how he learns, because you're kind of limited in how you can teach with the way this is? And does that slow down anything that you guys want to do, pushing your offense forward with what you want him to learn during this weird time of him trying to figure it out with a virtual learning system?
Yeah, great question. I think that it goes back to what I was saying a couple questions ago about this being a veteran year. I think that you're going to have guys in your system that have an understanding of how to work, what it takes, have been in similar systems. I mean, Cooks, has been in a similar system. Obviously, even Cobb has been in a similar system.
You mean New England?
Obviously, Deshaun Watson going into his fourth year has been in our system. He knows what to expect. He's been in contact with these guys that are new to our team. We will begin our off-season program on April 27th. The NFL gave us a memo this week about either starting April 20th or April 27th and using some weeks there up till May 15th. So we're going to use the 27th through the 15th
and we're going to have Zoom meetings and Discord meetings. Discord, we can show film. Zoom, we wouldn't be able to show film, but Discord, we can show film. And, we're having a staff meeting about that early next week about how we're going to do that. But I feel good about those guys, learning, seeing, because you can still you can see, you can teach, you can show film. If you want to get up on the board and draw something, or if Deshaun has a question, we'll send him a chalkboard. He can, hey, what about this? And draw it up on the board, or, whatever it takes until we can get back together. That's really the approach that we'll take, relative to what the rules are. We'll do what's best for everybody, but we'll obviously obey the rules of what the rules are. But we've got all that mapped out, and it's going to be different, but we're looking forward to seeing everybody in a little bit here.
Yeah, you better, Bill O'Brien. There's no excuses this year. I don't want to hear you, this is a tough season at the end of freaking January because you've lost in the division round, talking about because of the corona you couldn't achieve it. Because we know how you love to use 1,000,001 excuses that pop out.
Rick Bailey?
Bill, good morning. In these very interesting times with challenges, how were you able to assure yourself, the organization, that David Johnson's injury history would not be an issue? What kind of steps were you able to take there, and what assurances did you leave them?
Well, number one is I would say I've known Steve Keim for a lot of years. Steve's a Pennsylvania guy. When I was at Penn State, he and I got to know each other, and obviously being in the NFL. And so he was very, emphatic about the fact that David passed his exit physical at the end of the year. And obviously with us, we wanted our own doctor or a doctor that was close with Dr. Lowe to be able to examine David, and that's what ended up happening. But in the beginning, these are good faith negotiations that take a lot of time, whether it's and I didn't mention this earlier, but when you go back to the Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills trade, that was about 150, 200 phone calls between Chris Greer and myself. Steve Keim, you're talking about another 100 calls where you're talking about a lot of different things, including, the health of DeAndre, not just David. So,
who thought DeAndre was not healthy? Come on now. That was stupid. I get it. They're going to ask about his health, but then get crazy. You have to get crazy about David Johnson because, like he said today in his press conference, these nicks and these tweaks, put him on the bench, got him replaced. And this team has to be ready. That's why I really think they're going to go get a running back at 5th because you can't afford to lose that dude on not your third down back. Your first and your second and your third down. You can't, because we've seen Duke, and to me Duke is a great receiver, but he's very predictable, and so you need that running back that's gonna run the ball. You can't afford to just be Duke and one of your special team running backs that you have. Gotta draft one. I want to say you want to draft one in the 5th round, or if not, get one that comes undrafted. As far as why it took so long to get David Johnson's physical, I get it. I never thought it was because he was gonna fail. I honestly just thought because it was all about just getting the right doctor to test him, because we knew and we saw videos of him being just fine.
This is a league that's a very competitive league, but yesterday David passed his physical with flying colors, and he's ready to go. He's excited, and we're just excited for the day that we can get back out there.
Brian Smith?
In the last couple of years, how has the organization changed the way that you guys have evaluated players, better understood players, especially since Jack joined? And how does that relate to maybe a deeper, better understanding in terms of just overall player value?
Now, this is a great question because it starts to reveal a lot of the thinking behind the scenes in the front office. And you're going to hear Bill O'Brien mention a video producer guy who they've just started to include in their front office. And I find it freaking hilarious because not only did they not re-sign Casero for whatever reason, they weren't able to lock it in with him and he remained in New England, but New England is known for a guy named Ernie who, if you go back to, I think it's one of the documentaries that they have over the championship against the Falcons, he was the guy looking at players' injuries, looking how they were moving, were they stiff, just little small things like that's really helped New England and their success. And, you know, he's been mentioned here recently quite a lot because of all the work that he does. And, of course, he was part of the scandal with you know, videotaping. And so it's interesting to see that Bill O'Brien is falling behind the footsteps of his mentor, Bill Belichick, because we know he loves New England and their system. But it'll be interesting to see if we get in any type of, you know, Deflategate type of investigation here because you decide that you want to copy Bill Belichick to the T.
What pops into my mind when I hear that question, which is a great question, is I think about Brian, our analytics department, and I haven't mentioned them yet, but Jack and myself, we use Russell Joyner and his group quite a bit relative to everything from the prediction of an injury to the value of a trade to the value of a contract relative to the player, relative to the market. I would also mention Kevin Krakovic, who has been tremendous for us as our salary cap, in charge of the salary cap. He does a great job for us. I mean, Kevin and Russell. We've also, if this makes sense, we've taken Tim Bragg, our video, our director of video production. He's a very bright guy. So you're talking about a lot of brain power here with Russell, Timmy Bragg, and Kevin Krakovic. And we've kind of merged those departments in some way, shape, or form, especially Tim and Russell. And so they before we do anything, there's layers of research that really they do. And they produce that research. They give it to us. Actually, for the last 3 weeks, you know, Jack and I have been on our back patio here at my house in Houston, and you know, we made the Cooks trade back here through email upon email, Zoom calls with.
Can you imagine it now? Bill O'Brien in the back patio with Jack Easterby, and they're flipping patties, and they're saying, "Man, this is a good way to cook." And then Cooks pop up in the head. Jack Easterby remembers the tweet from the morning and says, "You know, it would be a great idea. Trade for Brandon Cooks. That'll calm the Texans fan downs."
Russell and Kevin Krakovic. So I guess my point is it's a long-winded answer, but we're really taking advantage of our tremendous analytics department and making as good a decisions as we can for the team.
This is why people are saying that they're playing Moneyball, and I would agree with that, except that you're overplaying players. And with Moneyball, you're hardly paying players.
And sometimes for the fans, you know, that's hard because I get it. You see a guy like DeAndre Hopkins who's not here anymore. I understand that. DeAndre is a great football player. But that decision relative to our team, we felt was in the best interest of our team, not just for next year, but moving into the future, which is what I was saying earlier. But I have to give those guys a ton of credit. And that's the one thing I do want to make clear to everybody there, especially in Houston, is that we have a great team of people. I've said that before. You know, yeah, Jack and I, we're running the football side of things, and Jamie Roots runs the business side, and Cal McNair runs the whole show.
Does he?
On the football side, we have just a tremendous team of people. Yeah, here's your public relations department right here. Amy Palcic, I see Allie on there, Omar. Also, you know, Mike Parston and equipment, Tim Bragg and video, Lad Harris, Mike Eubanks, Jeff Kaplan, Roland Ramirez, Kevin Krakovic, Russell Joyner, Brent McCara. I mean, you're talking about a great team of people with a lot of brain power that are helping us make really good decisions for the team. So hopefully, you know, you guys can write a lot about them.
Vanessa, you're up.
Yeah, I talked to Justin Reed earlier this week about how he's he's had to get creative, quite frankly, to stay in shape. And
he says you can write about them as to say, look, these decisions that are not just all on me, it's all also on them. They're the one also bringing the ideas. So to me, that's another excuse for Bill O'Brien. Because Bill O'Brien, if you really notice, he finds scapegoats out of nowhere. I promise you that if stuff don't go right, Tim Kelly will be a scapegoat. Gotti was a scapegoat. Cornell has been a scapegoat. Brable has been a scapegoat. The QB coaches have been a scapegoat. The physical guy with the physical training has been scapegoat. So the linebackers coach just last year, Pagano, he was a scapegoat. So
the position that a lot of guys are in. As far as y'all's strength and conditioning goes, are you sending players workouts? Are you guys checking in on them, or is it just kind of up to them?
Can you imagine Bill O'Brien sending out workout plans? Please. Dude has done 10 push-ups since 2015.
I think that it's a very unique time, Vanessa, like you're saying, and I think that one thing that we do is that Mike Eubanks stays in great touch with these guys. And so they FaceTime. I think as far as directing them and doing things like that, it's hard, especially for the guys that don't live in Houston. But for the guys that do stay in Houston, Nick Martin, he's got a garage weight room. He's got some guy, I think they're obeying social distancing.
So he almost gets in trouble with his response because he goes from saying people are not in Houston, which to me is like, okay, why does that matter? Like, they are where they are. You're telling me they can't work out where they are? Like, come on now. These people got money. They can order stuff. So I find that funny. And then he goes to reiterate that there's social distancing happening, which I think behind the scenes what he's truly saying is, look, we've told these guys to get together and work out where they can if they don't have equipment.
During this time right now, but he's got some equipment over there. He's lifting over there. You talked about Justin Reed, having to do some things, but Will Fuller, these are the guys that are some of the guys that are in Houston. I think the big thing is Mike Eubanks is doing a great job of directing them. Lad Harris on nutrition, all those different things. I think that our people in those programs are doing a really good job of communicating with those guys on a daily basis. But it is hard because they don't have the field, they don't have the weight room. And I think, again, it goes back to my point about this being a veteran year. That you're going to have guys that really, the majority of your guys are going to really have to understand, what it's going to take to be in shape when they do tell us we can play.
Hey, Bill, how you doing? Hey, the quarterback position, kind of a revolving door there. I know you resigned Roby. What are your overall thoughts on quarterback position? And then I'd like to know how close attention you're paying to the other AFC South teams this offseason.
Yeah, I think you were asking about the corner position. I would say that I'm really excited about the secondary. I think that we have a very diverse secondary. So one of the things about Bradley Roby is the versatility that he brings, the ability to play outside, play inside, to play a lot of different positions, play man-to-man, play zone.
Which is why they wanted Chris Harris.
Obviously, last year traded for Gary and Conley. Really excited about him next year. Lonnie Johnson, he's another guy. When you ask about off-field workouts and things, he's doing a great job of working out and staying in touch with Mike Eubanks. Expecting big things out of him. Keon Crossan, talked about him earlier. Vernon Hargraves, we were able to get back in free agency. Philip Gain.
I find it funny that he goes and talks about Keon Crossan before he talks about Hargraves. Quite interesting there.
We were able to get back. All these guys are very versatile players. Then if you look at the safety position, Justin Reed, Eric Murray, Jalen Watkins, A.J. Moore, just a real diverse group of guys that can, Eric Murray played corner. Jalen Watkins has played nickel. They're not just safety.
See, that's where he misses Deshaun Gibson. Like, he doesn't miss in Gibson at all. So I find that interesting, which means that Gibson might still, honestly, now that I look at it, Gibson might still be rehabilitating from his injury, man.
And yes, relative to the AFC South, we definitely pay attention. We have to. I mean, the division is very important. We got great teams in the division. Obviously, Tennessee, Indianapolis, and Jacksonville are all doing things to try to improve their team. Obviously, very tough division, great coaches, great players, and we try to keep track as best we can.
Randy McAvoy.
Hey, Bill, how are you? Hey, Randy. Quick question on the challenges you and the staff have faced. I know you saw some of these draft prospects at the combine, but now that the in-persons were eliminated and you had to deal with Zoom interviews, so on and so forth, just the final evaluations on potential draftees, what kind of challenges did that pose going that direction here in recent weeks?
Yeah, we've done a lot of it's a lot more FaceTime than in the past. We have FaceTimed a lot of guys. We have we've called a lot of different players. We've studied a lot of film, like obviously separately, but then we've been able to come together on Zoom calls and be able to communicate about what we see with players on film. I think we've done a good job. Again, I've got to say this again is when you have our Tim Bragg and Russell Joyner and these guys are setting us up with these Zoom meetings and Discord meetings and all those things. I mean, that's a valuable resource for us in our organization. So, look, there's been challenges, but we've been able to do a lot of good things to be ready for the draft. I would say on the back patio here, we practice social distancing, but Matt Bazzigan and Jack Easterby, they come over a lot. We stay 10 feet apart, but we were able to have some meetings there.
It's 6 feet.
About the draft. We feel very good about our preparation.
So you know he's not doing it.
Brandon Scott.
See, this is when I start getting bored of his interview. I think I even stopped listening to it, but.
Hey, I just wanted to ask, you promoted your offensive coordinators. You got a new you got a new defensive coordinator, a new play call on the offensive side of the ball. How much input do you bring them in making your decisions? Like, what kind of insight are you seeking from
This will be the last question we hear.
Those guys as new coordinators, as new play callers, when you're trying to, I guess, fit your new roster together, and also, I guess, a two-part question: how are you balancing the general manager versus the head coach dynamic and some of the interests that might sometimes conflict with the two jobs?
So the coordinators, Tim Kelly and Anthony Weaver, and then Brad Seeley, they've done a great job. They've just yesterday they all sent me their rankings by position for the draft. They've had their own Discord Zoom meetings with their staff, especially offense and defense. They've done a really good job of staying in touch with their staff. I'm just excited about those guys, especially Tim and Anthony being new. I mean, they have adapted to this unique time, and they're working hard, and they got a lot of good input into the draft. You have a lot of different ways to communicate, obviously with email and all the obviously Zoom and all the things that we've mentioned. But yeah, I feel really good relative to my role. Again, I have to really be as clear as I can about this. We have a great team. Myself and Jack Easterby do a lot together. We meet every day. We talk every day. Obviously Bazzigan, James Lipford, our college scouting director, Rob Kissel, our pro scouting director, and then all the other people that I mentioned earlier in this call. I mean, we just...
And blah, 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 blah. My take on the whole thing is we got to see, man. We truly do got to see. I'm not giving him 2 or 3 years, but I'm going to give him this offseason because, like I said, and don't kill me for this, I think that this might be a good draft for the Texans, only if they trade down and get an extra third-round pick. If they don't do that, it'll be tough because you're not going to be able to maximize everything that you want. And I think that ultimately that's what people are really pissed off about the Brandon Cooks, because you technically already had 2 seconds, So whether you wanted to use those and move up or you wanted to use those and trade down, people have done many mock drafts where I've done a mock draft where I ended up with 14, 17 picks. So, I'm no GM. I'm no freaking front office guy. So I'm just saying, like, the opportunity is there. I know the teams have been calling the Texans. I've said it before. The Eagles, the Cowboys are there. But I know the Texans are wanting to get closer to where they are currently, if not move up in the second to get an extra third. Of course, you wouldn't move up to get an extra third. You would have to move down. And so they're looking to aim anywhere from 12 to 14, but they're not afraid to move into the 18s, 19s in order to get an extra third-round pick. So it's going to be interesting, man. I really do think there are certain players that are going to fall. I just really hope that the players that fall, Texans are smart enough to know why they fell and don't pick up a bust. And that's what everybody is expecting to see. I won't be going live for that draft, like live reaction, but I will be recording my reaction to the first round just to see what falls down and give you guys a genuine reaction. At the end of the day, it's on a Thursday, so I'll be able to post that on a Friday. And then Friday, of course, we have the Texans picking. I believe the Friday is second and third round, and then Saturday you have the rest of the round. So, yeah, man, interesting to see what the Texans will do here in the near future, man. But there are no more excuses for Bill O'Brien, man. I don't want him coming back in January talking about the coronavirus made things hard for them, because at the end of the day, there is going to be a team that's prepared enough to win a Super Bowl, and everyone's expecting you to be that team because you're making the moves both last year and this year, both as GM, to take us there. And I've seen other teams with less time do a lot more. So let's get it, man.